Welcome to the Tron Church Talking Points podcast. I'm Katie and I'm here with Paul Brennan to discuss Sunday's sermons and just some of the things that's brought to mind over the weekend. So we had Willie preaching from Deuteronomy 13 and 1 Corinthians 10, and Paul, you were speaking from Joshua chapter 9. So
Correct.
Willie's not here, so we can say whatever we like. That's a joke. But his main point was we need to flee from idolatry, and that's from 1 Corinthians 10, and just how we see that in Deuteronomy as well, and the consequences for those who don't flee from idolatry. I thought it was just really helpful. I hadn't really thought about idolatry being an addict before. I don't know. Do you heard about that? Like,
I thought it was helpful, wasn't it? It was a very good way of putting it, and how idolatry is, it's things that are in and of themselves, good, they're fine, whether it's sport or career or whatever it is. But actually, it's once that becomes the sort of center of gravity in your life, and it starts to calling the shots. And rather than, this thing serving you, actually it becomes your master.
Yeah.
And actually it starts to change how you operate, and you start to sacrifice in order to obtain this thing.
Yeah.
And actually it becomes it's the gravity around which everything else moves.
Definitely, because I think there's a few people who were about to go to a football match later on Sunday, and they're like, oh, I can't tell anyone about this. But it's definitely not that. It's not about just having a hobby or an interest, is it? It's much more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's not saying that you can't enjoy particular things, whether that's whether it's wine or coffee or football, whatever it is. It's good to enjoy these things. These are a good gift from the Lord. So it's not saying we should sort of feel guilty about enjoying these things, but it's when that slips into becoming, and it's subtle, isn't it?
Yes.
That move, it doesn't happen all of a sudden. It can be a gradual thing, can't it?
Yeah. Willie talked about it being like a gradual erosion.
Yeah.
Which is, just how Satan gets us in a way, isn't it? Because you just think, I'm in denial. It's not an issue. It's not a problem. And then you're kind of so far down the road and you're like, oh, help. How do I even get back out of this?
I think the initial, it's like when people talk about, you go off course by a degree or two, but after 100 miles, you're a long way from where you intended to be.
Definitely.
So it can be quite a subtle thing at first, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's what was so kind of unsettling was it the people that you love the most. It was like close relations, wasn't it? In Deuteronomy, you see that it was people that actually, we probably trust, we love, are the ones who are often the ones who will have the biggest impact on us in pulling us away. So it could be, a partner, it could be a spouse who isn't yet a Christian, or it could be a boyfriend or girlfriend who isn't a Christian, but, like Willie was saying, they might say the right things. They might say, oh, well, I'm not against you going to church, but, why don't we just take this weekend off? Or, just compromising, I suppose, isn't it? Just slowly. And I think unless you have someone who's loving and gets alongside you and says, come on, what are you doing? And gets hold of you and says, you need to stop this, or can you have a look at your life, check it yourself, it's just probably so easy for all of us to go down that path. And I think it's probably quite easy to think of the word addict and you think just of alcohol and drugs. And actually it's not just that, we're all in danger of being pulled away from Jesus for all sorts of different reasons.
Yeah, that's right. And it's something that often we're not that able to see ourselves, because the things that are pulling us in are things we enjoy. And there's a reason why we do them. But actually, I think later on in the sermon, he sort of imagine a mature Christian friend, and what would they say about this situation you're in? And that's quite helpful, because it takes you outside of yourself a bit. And when you stop to think for a minute, what would so and so say? They might actually want to pull me up on this.
Yes.
What would they think if they knew my diary? If they knew what I was really doing Might
Yeah.
they take issue with something? That's actually quite a helpful
Totally. Oh,
exercise,
yeah.
isn't it, to think through,
Yeah.
because we can sort of fool ourselves and deceive
Mhm.
ourselves, and we often don't like facing reality.
Yeah, I think that's why we don't probably like having people who are accountable to, because
Yep.
they're like, I know that if like I'm doing something I shouldn't, I won't tell certain people because I
Hmm.
know they're going to say, what are you
Haley
doing? What are
sorted
you
out.
playing at? Yeah. And actually,
That's
I
quite
think we're
telling, isn't it?
all,
Yeah.
yeah, we're all probably good at like, we keep things secret if we know actually like
Hmm.
this isn't right.
Hmm.
And that's the grace of God, isn't it? Is like the guilt of grace that,
Hmm.
or the grace of guilt, sorry, that actually, um, that God's at work in your heart and convicting you,
Hmm.
but you need to like repent of it and you need to like sort it out.
Hmm.
And it was interesting in terms of like, so it's not just time, is it? But it's also things like your money. I guess it just made me think about the promises that we make when we join the church. You
Yeah.
think about giving a fitting amount of your time, talent, and money to the church,
Hmm.
and just actually things like your bank account, like, it's not just your time, but, if someone was to see what you're spending and the proportionate money you're spending, and, I'm really challenged by this, like, I could be really quick to spend something on myself, but how much am I willing to like give to like something like the Easter offering or whatever
Yep.
it is,
Yep.
and actually that's also telling of what is important to us,
Hmm.
how much money we're spending on certain things and not things that are actually of eternal value.
Yeah. It's yeah. Show me your bank balance and show me your calendar,
Yeah.
and that really that is a you can that shows you the reality, doesn't it? You can
Yeah.
say all you want, but actually, what's happening? What are you doing? Where's your money going? Where's your time going?
Yeah.
And actually, that reveals a lot.
Yeah.
And you can't hide from that, can you?
No. We spoke. Willie was speaking a bit about that with James, wasn't he? It's not just you can say all the right
Yeah.
things, you can have all the right answers, win a Bible quiz, but if your life's not this like measuring up,
Hmm.
it's not worth anything, is it? And
Hmm.
actually, it really does damage to the gospel if you're professing all sorts of things but not living it. So like, how do we see, like, how can we see this being played out and the danger that has with like within the church family? How do we kind of help each other? Do you think then? I think Willie sort of suggested that we need to help each other, um to basically not be pulled away, not be lured away. So I guess, what responsibility do you think we have as Christian brothers and sisters to our church family? How do we do this well without just going around being like pointing the finger at everyone?
Yeah, you don't want to be the sort of the church policeman
No.
wandering around and pulling people up. But I think it just plays into normal
Yeah.
Christian friendship, doesn't
Yeah.
it? And get alongside each other, making sure that you are known by others and not isolating yourself as a Christian. So that means fully playing a part
Yeah.
in normal church life, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
it means being at church as often as you can. So morning
Yeah.
and evening, and
Yeah.
being at the prayer meeting, and
And growth group.
if you're not there, then you can't be known and you can't know
No.
others. So I guess it's taking that responsibility seriously, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be our brother's keepers, and that
Yeah.
means showing up.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when you can spot things. If someone's not been
Definitely.
at church, or if they're actually down at the football and not at
Hmm.
church, that gives you a bit of a way in. So you can't shortcut that.
No.
There's no quick answer to that, but
Yeah.
being present and being around
Yeah.
and noticing people and that sort of thing.
Definitely. And it's that whole thing of like, the greatest commandment to love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, if we're trying to do that collectively, then hopefully that should come quite obvious quite soon, that like who's not around. And I think the passage in Deuteronomy was just really striking, wasn't it? Because Willie spoke for quite a long time about what this will look like, what idolatry is and isn't. And just in the passage, the person who was luring someone away, they had to be stoned to death, didn't they? And if you just read it without maybe thinking more like in depth about it, you'd be like, gosh, that seems a bit stark. But actually,
Mm-hmm.
it is just so dangerous, because you think about the big picture. The reality is, whether if someone is doing that, they have an eternity
Yeah.
away from God.
Yeah.
You
I think
know,
there can be a sort of temptation, kind of, to think about church as just another club, another society
Hmm.
that we're a member of, and you know it's something that we enjoy. It's not that big a deal, but actually remembering what it is we're doing, and
Yeah.
um, we are part of something that is going to last into eternity, and the ultimate things are on the line.
Yeah.
So I think it's remembering that
Yeah.
is key, isn't it? What we're doing as we
Definitely.
gather is really significant.
Oh, totally. And it's also remembering the eternal perspective of like what we're looking forward
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
I mean, who's against a nice weekend away abroad or, or whatever it is, those are great things, but it's actually thinking, okay, I can sacrifice a nice weekend away if it's actually meaning I'm going to be there for that new Christian who doesn't really know anyone. I've had a good conversation with them, and actually I could go away another time.
hmm
And
hmm
actually, I think in terms of the value for the church family and for like new Christians or people who are seeking, it's so beneficial having
hmm
people there regularly. So it's
yes.
yeah,
It's
just
not, we're not anti weekends away,
no, definitely not.
but it's, if you look over the year and actually you're away,
Hmm.
you know, 2 out of 4 Sundays or something like that, you know, that you got to ask questions and just reflect on that.
Yeah.
Um, are you in a meaningful way able to help your brothers and sisters in the Lord?
Yeah,
Let alone for your own spiritual good, but
totally. And people must get just sick of being asked if they're new to the church if they're not there every other week. I mean, obviously there's some people who are like medics and they can't be there for like work
hmm
reasons.
hmm
But most of us aren't in that boat, are we? Yeah, so I think it was just very helpful just to be remembering just this is a life and death situation. And that's why it's so important because the stakes are high. Someone pulling someone away to other gods, whatever they look like, is leading people to death. And I thought it was just really helpful just to actually, really spoke about the fact we need to kill off our desires before it kills us,
hmm
pulling us
hmm
away from Jesus. And I think when you have that in your mind, it actually makes you okay. I'm not desperately wanting to like say this to someone else, but I've got to check my own life and check my priorities and what I'm doing with myself, and then try and see if it is actually, if my heart is focused on Christ or is it being pulled away by other things. And I think everyone I spoke to after the service were like, oh yeah, that's yeah, I would definitely feel like there's
hmm
something, there's so many different things that can be, and it's not necessarily one thing either, is it? It can be changing
Yep.
depending on
Yep.
your age and
Yeah.
stage, and yeah, like how much money you have accessible or time, and yeah, so I guess we've got to be kept on our toes, don't we? And just be thinking all the time, like, okay, where's my first love? Is it
hmm
for the Lord or is it being pulled away?
hmm
Um, yeah, so that's just a lot to think about. And as Willie was preaching, he did mention things like relationships, and you mentioned this as well, Paul, in the
Yeah.
evening. Just how potent relationships can be, and actually, often it's relationships, whether it's boyfriend, girlfriend, um, can be the things that really just pull people away. And,
Yeah.
speaking to people yesterday, a number of people that have been dating guys or girls who aren't Christians and they're nowhere spiritually
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And it's just to start warning. And you also mentioned just the importance of being wise when we're thinking about making an oath.
Absolutely. Because it's not a light thing. Um, and as you said, this is the very closest of relationships. And that's really going to impact massively
Hmm.
your own spiritual life and the spiritual life of your family. Um, and so I think being wise about that and being realistic about it, because it's something we warn about often, but that's because over the years we see it happening
Hmm.
again and again. Um, an unwise relationship is often the reason that someone drifts away from church and drifts
Hmm.
away from the Lord. So you can sort of trick yourself into thinking, "Oh, I'll be different. I'll be the exception," because you do see
Yeah,
you do see it
very
sometimes. The Lord
occasionally.
is
Yeah.
gracious, but that's not the norm. That's the exception. And so that's why we do
Hmm.
warn about this so strongly. Actually, is this relationship going to help you and grow to maturity in the Lord, or is it going to pull you away? And I think at the start, you know the answer to that, but you just, you know, you enjoy their company and you get caught up, and
and
before
the
you know
longer
it,
it goes,
the longer it goes, the harder it gets.
Yeah.
So I think it's a real warning, and I would urge you, if you're listening and maybe you're young and not married or not dating, make that conviction now that you're not going to go there, because once you start, it's hard to get out. And I've had conversations with people who realize they're in a mess, but they find it so hard to extricate themselves. It's because there's feelings and emotions and all that kind of stuff wrapped up. So the best course of action is just not to go there in the first place. So resolve to not do it before you're even in that situation.
Definitely. And if somebody is brave enough to say to you or challenge you, you need to really love that person and hold on to them for dear life as a good friend.
Well, faithful are the wounds of a friend. And if someone's willing to say that to you and say the hard thing, then they're a good friend.
Oh, definitely. And after Sunday, someone was just saying, how they were in a relationship and they could just see how clearly like it wasn't right, and how they were being pulled away from the Lord, and actually just how God had saved them from that relationship, because they just knew that it wasn't going to be good for them. So the Lord's really kind, and praise the Lord, like many years on, they're loving the Lord and serving him, and very thankful that didn't work out. So I think it's trusting God, isn't it? Trusting God's
good. Because at the time it doesn't feel like it, does it? It feels very messy and painful, but actually it is for the long term. It's for the long term good.
Yeah, and that's why God gives us these warnings, isn't it? Because it's not because he wants to kill our fun.
That's right.
But he loves us, and he wants us to like Willie was saying, we're dehumanizing ourselves when we're not obeying him and bearing his image in the way that we live our lives. So it's a kind of rehumanizing people into the way that they're supposed to be, isn't it? When we're trying to encourage them to obey the Lord. And Paul, thinking about Joshua, I guess you're mentioning marriage in a kind of a very different kind of context. It was more just really, in some ways, just thinking about the kind of oaths and making promises, and actually not being lured away really by the world's answer to things that are hard, by saying, "Oh, just give up and get divorced," And obviously, we know there's reasons why some people get divorced, and good reasons, but actually, when we're living in a society where they don't value marriage at all, it's just really important, isn't it, for people not to be thinking, "Oh yeah, divorce is just a good answer to this problem."
Yeah, because I mean there are grounds in the Bible for divorce, but they're very limited. And the basic thing you see is that God hates divorce, and the thing we're looking at in Joshua was really urging folk to, when oaths are made, and that is an oath you make publicly in the sight of God, is to honor that oath. And being unhappy in a marriage is not grounds for ending it. And as you said, our culture would say the opposite. If you're not happy, if the marriage isn't fulfilling your needs, then you can walk away, and it's getting easier and easier to dissolve them. And that's just the cultural waters we swim in. That's the air we breathe, and that really does seep into the church and into our own thinking. You see it in the movies, don't you? On shows. I mean, how often do you see marriage being celebrated and honoured? Almost never. It's always the opposite. You're kind of rooting for the affair, aren't you? The way that the whole thing's set up and presented in the music and everything, you're kind of almost wanting it to happen because that's how it's been presented. And so that's what we're seeing all the time. Then that just seeps into our own thinking, doesn't it? So we need to have this very clear, we have to keep these vows, and we're to invest in our marriages.
Definitely. And it's not just marriage, is it? Because I think you were talking about, being trustworthy, holding on to your word, keeping your word when you've said you're going to do something. We all know people that we'd ask to do something, we know they're going to do it. Other people probably not so much. And actually, for yourself, because I'll speak for myself, you're proud, you want to be known as someone who's like trustworthy and is going to like do what they say. But actually, it's got, again, like the wider witness of the church, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's people who do that, they're going to stick out, aren't they? If in the workplace or amongst your friends, if you're a person who's known to do what they say they will do, then it's going to shine brightly, isn't it? It's going to be as you say, a real witness to others around us.
Yeah.
We always talk about, well, when we do the on-board course and I'm doing the thing about witness and evangelism, I always say that it's not only what we say, but it's our lives. They are really compelling witness. It's not so much what we say, but what we do that people will notice, and there's something different about this person.
Yeah.
And so that a normal Christian life, someone who keeps their oaths is going to really stand out, and people are going to wonder what's going on here. Why are you like that?
Absolutely. So do you want to be atypical in a positive sense?
Yeah.
Definitely. And Paul, I thought in the passage it was quite funny in a way, because you kind of think, were they really daft? Like, how did they not recognize that these guys were local?
They must have been good actors.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, they were like
convincing.
had good like makeup or something, makeup artists, but it was the fact that God's people in verse 14 it says, they didn't take counsel from the Lord. They bought the lie from the Gibeonites, and they were like, oh, right, they made this mistake. They didn't seek counsel from the Lord. And obviously that is kind of like, that you're talking about that sinking feeling of like when you've messed up, and we've all been there, had that feeling. And I was thinking, what will that look like for us in our day-to-day life as well? It's obviously it's a specific situation there, but we should be doing what they forgot to do, which is seeking counsel from the Lord. So how do you think that should affect us in just our daily lives?
I think some people can sort of over spiritualize it and look for signs and wonders, and they pray to the Lord and expect very clear, obvious sign about a course of action, but it's much more normal and down to earth, isn't it? God's ordinary means of grace fundamentally. So that is his word. He's given us the scriptures, and they are sufficient for life and godliness. So are we in God's word? Are we at church week by week? Are we part of our growth group? Are we reading the scriptures and learning and hearing what the Lord is saying? But he's also given us each other, hasn't he? He's given us the church family. He's given us older, wiser folk in the church. And so when we are faced with decisions, and perhaps big decisions, are we seeking counsel?
Yeah.
And are we asking those, maybe those in leadership in our church, are we asking them?
Yeah.
What that can sometimes look like is people shop around until they find the opinion that agrees with what they've already decided to do.
Yeah. Or they'll just know who to ask.
That's right. I know what they're going to say. They're going to back up what I think already. Are you actually willing to be challenged on your own thinking? And so it's just something to be aware of. I'm not going to ask so-and-so because they're going to say something I don't want to hear. So making use of folk around us in the church and praying to the Lord. And as we pray, I think Willie's got this in his book. I think his dad had this little saying, but prayer is thinking God's thoughts after him. And so what we do as we're praying, actually, we're aligning ourselves with God's priorities and with what God thinks. You're not trying to get God to agree with you, but actually as you pray, and the opening words of the Lord's Prayer are what? Hallowed be your name. So actually that's reorientating our thinking to what's for God's glory, not my own, and your whole way of thinking is being changed. And that can really help you as you make decisions, because actually you're thinking, what would the Lord want here? So we're not asking for some sort of special magical revelation that's going to be written across the sky, but it's much more, in some ways, mundane than that.
Yeah, because actually you mentioned this already in your sermon, that, God had told them like who they were to wipe out.
Yeah.
So they just like taken like a whole 2 seconds to be thinking, oh, hang on a minute, who are we supposed to be trusting here? Like, who are we not? Yeah. So even like you're saying, just like thinking about what does the Bible tell us? What does God's word tell us? And is this in line with it? And like you say, it's really helpful because, there's nothing that God hasn't revealed to us that we,
exactly.
that we need to know.
On the relationship stuff, which we've touched on already.
Yeah.
The word's pretty clear on it.
Yeah.
And so when people are coming to you saying, I don't know what to do, and I think you do know, actually,
Yeah.
you just don't like it.
Yes.
And that's often the problem. We're unwilling. And so that's where the battle is fought. It's not so much in the intellect, it's in the will, and submitting ourselves to God's ways. That's the
Yeah.
hardest bit, isn't it?
Definitely. Again, that's the heart, isn't it? Being lured away. And yeah, I think it's really, maybe it's from his dad, I don't know. But, he says it's not the bits of the Bible that I don't understand that I have a problem with.
It's the
But it's
bits
all
I do. Yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
So it's actually, yeah, no, that's really helpful. And it made me think also just the prayer, because, we've been talking about praying for our family, friends, anyone that we know really that we're wanting or seeking to invite to the next life course and to church. And just the importance and value of prayer, and just how God's given us that great gift of being able to speak to him, and bring these people before him. And it was actually just very helpful, and just remembering that it's obviously, again, we talk about this quite a lot with, that it's only the Lord, we know that it's only the Lord can bring people into life from death. And so we need to not give up praying, and not not give up, even though it's been maybe a long time that we've been praying for people, or we've invited them many times to church or to life or whatever it is, and they said no thanks. But just not to give up on people. And there's been folk in church recently who have, I know, been praying for decades for certain people in their family, and praise God, they've started coming to church
Yeah,
and coming to
amazing.
different things at church, which is just such an amazing testimony and a witness, actually, to younger Christians, of actually not giving up,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
trusting the God that we're praying to, that he is good and he wants. And I think you and Willie, are talking about this, everyone is welcome. I loved what you were saying, Paul, about no matter what you're here for, you're welcome. It made me think of Moana for some reason, but it's a song, isn't it? But it's just
You're going
that
to sing
the
it for us,
reality is,
Katie.
I'll save you from that. But it's true. But I think the thing is, that's like the goodness of God. And you were talking about that in like your third point about the grace of God, and just God is so kind and so good that
Yeah.
even though these guys, they didn't deserve it, did they?
No.
I
Well,
mean,
that comes through so clear, doesn't it, in Joshua?
yeah.
Just you see the folk that get attention and time in the narrative, like
Yeah.
Rahab gets a whole chapter, and these Gibeonites as well. These outsiders being
Yeah.
brought in. It's
And rebuilding the
yeah,
wall.
yeah,
I mean, that was amazing, isn't it?
yeah. It's really incredible as
It's
you
so
see that
cool.
later on in the Bible. It's yeah. I think it should encourage us because whose whose life isn't a bit messy
Yeah,
and so on, but the Lord can use it and make something beautiful out of
definitely.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the whole thing of just remembering the grace of God again and again is that, like, no one is out with God's
Mhm.
grace. And so, thinking about inviting our friends, which we just sometimes it feels like it's so unlikely they're going to say yes, or
Yeah.
so unlikely, but we should never give up on them. And I was just thinking about there'll be people that I'm going to be inviting to the life course, and I already think, oh, they'll probably say no. But actually, I need to be praying and remembering that God's grace is able, and God's power is able to bring
Yeah.
anyone from.
We've got no idea what's
Yeah,
going on in their lives and
totally.
the kind of things they're reading and thinking about. We can't see that.
No.
But the Lord is at work in amazing ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was listening to something recently. It was just talking about, um, you know, thinking about not just inviting people, but they call it bring viting.
A bring invitation.
A bring invitation.
That's
But
good. That's good. Tell
it's
us
quite
about bring
good.
invitations,
So a
Katie.
bring invitation is not just invitations. I love an invitation. I love, inviting people along, but a bring invitation is a whole other ball game where you're actually thinking about not just asking someone to come to church, but thinking, okay, how can I help them come to church and bring them with me?
Yes.
Whether that's like going with them in the bus or train, giving them a lift in your car, meeting them outside so they don't have to walk in on their own,
I think that's a big thing. A
things
number
like
of
that.
folk have said that to me.
Yeah.
Some new Christians have said to me, it was so helpful when so and so met me outside and walked in with me. That just breaks down a whole barrier
Yeah.
because it's like imagine walking into a brand new building you've never been before. Everyone else
Yeah.
there kind of knows each other. and you're walking in by yourself.
Yeah.
But actually, to have someone bring you in, that's a massive thing. It's a very simple thing, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And if you've been in the church for like a year or so, it's all very normal and you're very relaxed. But for loads of people, it's a huge number of folk.
Yeah. Where do I sit?
Yeah.
What, when do I stand up? All these kind of things.
Absolutely.
You can help them with that.
Yeah. I met someone yesterday who was at church for the first time since she was about 6 or something. But she isn't working at the moment, but she was also just saying, I don't go anywhere, I don't do anything. So actually, this is like social anxiety 101,
Yes.
like health, but actually she was fine. But even just kind of, she came with someone and was sitting with them. And that is just a really good example of how to bring people to church,
Yeah, so an invitation is a sort of hit and run piece, isn't it? You sort of send the text, all the best. Whereas a bring is, no.
Yeah.
I'll bring you, I'll walk in with you.
And you kind of need that, I think, now, because we're so post kind of Christian culture anyway, that most people haven't been in church unless they've been brought to church as a kid. So it's really foreign to most folk.
If they have been at church, it's probably been for a wedding or a funeral.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. So it was really helpful and just really challenging about, okay, if I'm going to be praying about people I'm bringing, asking them, but also just sort of giving them a way which I'll make it as easy as possible for them to come to, whether it's church or life. And it's not long before the next life course anyway, is it?
Well, it's less than a month away, 20th of April, Monday the 20th of April.
Somebody's signed up already, which is great.
I've got a few folks signed up. And,
brilliant.
It's good. So, all the details on the website.
Yeah.
Get yourself booked in.
So it's the 20th of April, isn't it?
Monday the 20th of April.
So we don't want to leave it too late, because people need to make plans.
That's right.
If you're going to be a bring viter, you need to go for coffee, or maybe just make sure you're free. And I think, so I spoke to a couple last night who, I think the Christian lady is going to bring her friend and maybe just come for the first week and then see how they get on. But be prepared.
That's a great thing. I think, if you've got someone coming onto the life course, I'd definitely come with them the first week.
Yeah.
If not for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And once they're settled in, you can duck out. But I think, it's great to do that.
Definitely. And Monday's a great night because most people aren't doing anything on Monday.
It seems to work really well.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a night where people they're at the start of the week, they're fresh, got energy.
Yeah,
but generally don't have social plans, so it works really well.
And it's lighter nights, which is nice as well. So it's really good. Excellent. Well, Paul, thanks so much. Are you preaching on Sunday?
I'm not actually. We've got Paul Levy.
Oh, right.
It's the Didasco conference this weekend.
Paul.
So I think Paul's preaching morning and evening.
Hey,
no idea what he's doing. But
really good. He's Welsh, isn't he?
He is Welsh.
Yeah, so we can translate.
Yep. Yep.
Well, look, thanks so much. That's great. Thanks for joining us, and hope you can listen again next week. Thanks.